So after realizing that my last life was a dud, we're gonna have to do all this all over again. So, what we are doing now is we are working on our sign, and because I'm equally frustrated over this shit, I'm gonna be stumbling quite a lot. So TSR sign, as I explained in the last one, it's a temporary speed restriction. It has has three faces, 1, 2, 3, and it's got a cuboid pole. So it's a cube that's been extended. It's not quite a rectangle, and it's not quite a coffin either. So I'm gonna have to work with that. So we're gonna move on to Blender, and we're going to create it on our own. So here's Blender. We start off with a cube. The cube is what you start off with every single time. Now up here in the top, you've got your names, you've got your camera and your light. Personally, I don't need either the camera or the light, so we can just scrap those. But on the cube, we can rename it. So you go down to the IP data and you click renames down the bottom, well, second from the bottom, and we're gonna call it poll. Who doesn't love a poll? So, what we are going to do now is we are going to scale this pole so that it's down to a proper size. So we're going to make it tiny, about halfway. Hey, look at that, nearly nailed it first time. Just needs to be a little tinier. How's that? Still too big. Try again. How's that? Perfect. So keep a little down the bottom for raised sections of track. What we're going to do is we're going to click our transform, and we are going to click this blue square up the top here in this circle, and we're going to shrink it so that it comes to a decent size. We can raise it and shrink it as much as we like. Move icon in the corner, click that, come up, and keep it. I prefer one cube down, so that gives us enough space to fiddle with it and shrink it again because it's too big. There we go, that's much better. Or is it? There we go. So, the main thing about a TSR is the height. Now, in our display port, you will see that there's a footpath down this road here, and this is the size of your average gantry. We can see that it doesn't even meet the top. So I'd say it's at least quarter to 1/8 of the size. So we're going to do that as such. We're going to go back into our Blender port, and we're going to change that. So we're going to grab our transform. We're going to shrink it till about there. That's perfect. And keep it one cube below. So we have our pole done, but our face, where's our face? Why do we not have a face? And you might be thinking to keep the x-axis as your front, but because we're making a trackside asset, we'll have to keep it y-side front. We can fix that when we export. So what we want to do is we want to click Add, Mesh, Plane. This is our plane. It's a massive ass flat cube. And what we want to do is we want to shrink that down to size. So we go up, we click transform, just kidding, we click scale, and we shrink it. It needs to be tiny. And now looking at it, we've made it too small, but that's okay. We can scale it properly using the rotate tool. So you'll see over on the left hand side, sorry, that's my right, you'll see on the right hand side we have rotation, location, and scale. If we click this little red line here, that's actually a disk if you look at it on the side, we click this little red disc and move it slightly. Oop, you'll see that changed. It's 0.369 degrees. So you want to change that to a solid 90. The sign face does not belong there. So what we want to do is we want to move this forward. Go back to our Y. Whoops, we were on our negative Y. Don't make that mistake. I've already done that once. Move this forward. Move this up. To about there. And then what we can do then is we can scale it. So I prefer probably using the transform tool because it gives you the freedom of moving. So what we want to do is we want to make it about that wide by probably, since no measurements exist, we got to do this by eye. That wide by that tall, maybe make that just a little bit skinnier so it fits in the lines. And then as you'll see on the display port, it's got these rounded edges. Now we can't make rounded edges on a cube without making additional UV lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our Blender port and we're going to use this little trick. In the top corner here we've got object mode. What you want to do is you want to change that, my apologies, and click in edit mode. So this is edit mode. It allows you to add more vertices and it even allows you to do this cool trick. Now I'm going to turn on-screen annotations for this because it's a fairly important step. So it does not seem to have installed again. So don't worry about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click A. That highlights all the things that were highlighted in object mode, being our plane. And what we can do is we can hit Control R. And if you move quite close to the plane, you'll see this yellow line. This yellow line basically means that we have the capacity to make more bevels. So you want to use the mouse wheel, that's the wheel in the middle of your mouse, and you want to hit it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. If you want, you can hit it twice, so you have that line in the middle. Either way, it does not matter. So then you'll see that we've got these new vertices here. You want to do the same for the top. Control R. In the middle, 1, 2. Just like that. So then you're wondering there's no bevel, which honestly is a shame because I like bevels. So what will happen is we will highlight the corners only. So 1, hold shift, 2, 3, 4. So once you've got those 4 highlighted, you can hit Control Shift B and this little line will appear. So what this line does, if you stretch it out, you'll see that we have a bevel. So that kind of looks like an out of whack stop sign, but it's not rounded. So what you want to do is you want to move it back a little bit and you want to roll your mouse wheel. 1, 2, 3. So you roll that 3 times and adjust it properly. We now have rounded edges. So if we go back into object mode and we really zoom in on the corner, you'll see that's fairly rough, but this is because we are extremely zoomed in, so that won't matter. So we are going to rename this plane and this will be our front face. Front face. Whoops. Front face. And now you're thinking, why front face and no back face? Well, the only downside about using a plane is that when you put an IV map, or UV map, I'm not in the hospital, the UV map on a plane, it shows up on both sides. So you'll get your 1 kilometer mark on this face, and it will show up backwards on this face, and that just looks weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this forward. So we're going to click move. We're going to move this forward like that. Doesn't matter how far you move it forward, because what we're going to do is we're going to cheat a little bit. So we're going to hit Control C, Control V. And what that did was create a front face 001. You can rename that if you'd like. Rename it to rear face. Easy. And you're looking at me thinking it's the same face. Well, prepare to get your mind blown, because if we highlight rear face and move this backwards, we have a duplicate. How amazing is that? So not only do we have rounded edges, we've also fixed our face issue, meaning that we won't have this problem. Now, looking at this now, I can still see that my sign is a little bit too heavy on the pole. So we might need to shrink it a little bit more. See about there. It's all in the matter of the eyes. So you can see now that compared to the picture is not too much of a stretch. So what we also want to do is we want to make sure that these are moved in to the point where you can look at the upper view and not see them. So we want to move these back so that they touch. If they touch that pole, that means it's good. If it goes through the pole, that's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's not the end of the world. So you want to go forward. And what you want to do is this front face, is you want to move it back. And you're thinking, they look a little thin. And you are correct, they do look a little thin. So what we can do is we can select our rear face, go into this little wrench, which is a modifier. We can click this scroll down menu, and you will see in the generate section, you'll see a solidify. So if we click that, you'll see that it instantly got thicker. We don't want to do that. We want to make that at least a quarter that size. So we can either type it or we can scroll. And as you see, if we scroll backwards, it goes a lot worse. So what we want to do is we probably want to make that 0. So that's still thin again. So you want to go 0. This is where you have to get extremely technical. 0.0005 is perfect. But it's still thick. So we can go 0.0003.5. No, 2.5, my bad. 2. We can copy that over here as well. Just add modifier, solidify, type it, 0.0002. So what'll happen is you move these back, and if you're really good at the eyes, you can line them up, and it won't look like they're two separate beings. They are one. So that's the start. So what we need to do is we need to repeat that 3 more times. So you can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way. Personally, I prefer the easy way. So you want to select the front face, Control C, Control V. You want to move it forward again. So if we go back to our display port, you will see that we've got the little R in the top corner. That's what we need. I don't want to add a note. Oh my god. Okay. So you see the little R in the top corner. That's what we want to do. So we want to go back to our Blender port. We want to move it forward, as we've already done. Good job. You're already ahead of me. And we want to transform. So we move it to the side, and we shape it so that it looks like that it somewhat resembles a rounded rectangle. If it's too small, don't worry, because you can resize it like that. So then move it to the top right corner. Now, as you'll see from the display port, we have it sitting slightly ajar off the top, and it's got a major offset on the side. So we want to configure that as realistically as possible, because we know certain people like to complain about things. So I accidentally minimized that, my bad. Whoops, that's not what I want. You decide to hide your taskbar and this shit happens. Alright, so Blender. So you want to move this up so that it's slightly ajar off the top and that it's almost half point off the end. But it's too forward. That's okay. So we still have our solidify modifier active and we can also rename this. So we are going to rename it. Whoa, hello, what just happened there? We are going to rename it as RHS rear. So this will tell us that this is the right hand side of our sign. So we just keep moving it. And if it goes behind, you know you've hit it. So you want it slightly in front, just like that. And now you're thinking it's all getting cluttered. How are we going to individually add photos to this? So, fun fact, I don't add many photos to my textures. I often create them myself. However, if I don't have the correct font, I will always use a photo. But this is where the UV editing tab comes in handy, and we will cover more of that later. So we just want to create these last three signs. So we've got the front and rear, and then we'll cover UV editing. So right now we're hitting 16 minutes and we already have the basic skeleton of our sign. Yes, it looks a little too big, but we can fix that because we are talented people and we know what we're doing. So, you want to copy paste that, rename it. Personally, you don't have to rename it. I just choose to rename it because it just makes sense and you don't get confused. So if you're good on the eyes, you can zoom in and move it so that you're half in, half out. So now it looks like we've just got one solid sign on top of another solid sign. Must say it looks good. So, hopefully I have members of my group chat watching this and realizing that a certain member will hopefully realize that sign creation does not happen overnight. Sign creation takes practice and it creates perfection. So what will happen is hopefully they will reflect on this and realize that asking people for certain signs is not easy. It takes sweat, it takes hard work, and this does not happen instantly. Hopefully they will learn how to use this after the tutorial, so that's enough therapy for one day. So, we now have our right hand side. So we go back to our display port. We need a speed limit on the bottom. And on this example we have 40. Now they can range from anything. They can range to 60, 20, 25, 15, 10. There's currently a 10 kilometer speed restriction between Rockley Station and Salisbury Station when it crosses the steel siding, which I actually found pretty cool. So we might create the 40 for this one. So in Blender again, same old, Control C, Control V. You want to rename it just so you don't get it lost. Rename speed sign front. You want to move it. Bloop. You want to resize it as such. That looks about right. You need to make it just a little bit bigger. Whoa, that's too big, buddy. And then we just want to move it. Now, one small boo-boo I have made is that the speed does not exactly have rounded edges. I mean, yeah, it kind of does if we zoom in on it a little bit. So if we zoom in and scroll down, it's kind of got like a smooth, I don't know, it's very subtle, but it's there. So we won't worry about that today because there's really no point. Why did I minimize that again? So we'll just have to make do with what we have. So back to Blender. And my phone is going off like crazy. What's going on? relationship drama. So we want to make sure that this is to scale to the best of our ability. So we think this is a little thin, so we might need to stretch it out a bit more. There we go, that looks all right. And then make sure that we've got a proper distance between the top and the bottom. I prefer about there. That should work. If not, we can always fix it later. So that's our front. Control C, Control V, rename it. Whoops. Rear. And so, same as I always say, good on the eyes. You can move it back so that it touches the pole. Just like that. And the front goes as well. Personally, I think halfway merging is the perfect way to go. So we now have our sign. It does look tall and we can fix that. So we just need to hit the transform tool and bring it down to earth a little bit more. Just like that. And if you're worried that things won't work, you can highlight things individually. Just like that. You can also hit the move tool and move it down to your preferred location. So we have our sign, but we don't have a bracket holding it up. The bracket is by far the worst part because it took me forever to realize how to create a bracket. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little extra time for ourselves and we're going to cheat a little bit more. So what we're just going to do is we're going to hit the pole, Control C, Control V, and we're going to call this bracket A. Now what we want to do with bracket A is we want to shrink it down to an appropriate size. Enough so it feels like we've got enough room for the sign to move. So then we move it up. And more. And about the middle here. We want to move it back. We want to stretch it. And as always, when I cover the really important part, the cat decides it wants to cough. Oh, get out, you. Go on. I love my wheelie chair sometimes. And so we've got a cheap and nasty bracket that we can just copy paste onto the other one. With sizing, of course. Does look good. Now you're wondering how to get the paint on. The paint's the easy part, but what we need to do first is assign a material. See, Trainz has this weird sort of programming that it requires a material on a model to function properly because physics. So what we want to do is we want to go down to our material properties tab here. You see our material. So you can call this whatever you like. We can call it Where Am I? Or Who That? But right now we're just going to call it material. Now, Trainz does not reckon material. It doesn't recognize it. He just goes, new phone, who this? So what we need to do is we need to hit .m.1text. So this is a single texture, meaning that it's nothing special like PBR metal. It's just texture. So we need to go back through our entire list and make sure that every single face has one text. Whoops. You've got one text. You don't. One text. One text. One text. One text. And one text. So now they all have a material. So now the paint. The paint is honestly the most fun part you could ever imagine. And I will actually be covering that as well. Because what I can do is I can create another scene. I can duplicate my display scene. And I can give it a snappy name. Painting. Cool. So, back to Blender. Assigning the UV. Now UV is pretty much where you want things to go and what color they will be. Now you will always make mistakes when you have UV, but luckily they're not life-ending, and I will show you how to fix them. So what we want to do is we want to first assign where our pole will go. So we want to highlight our pole and go into our UV editing tab. So this is what a UV editing does. It basically unwraps your shape and it fits it on a flat plane. So think of a cube as this is the top, this is the side, this is under it, and this is the bottom of it. And that's the other side. And this is the middle. So what we want to do is we want to make room for everything else. We don't want the sign taking up all the credit. So we want to highlight the lot. We want to hit the scale tool. And we want to shrink it down a bit because the sign isn't important when it comes to color. So you can make it as small as possible with less detail. You can just plop him there. He can sit there. Look at it. Look how happy he is. And we want to go back. We want to hit our sign front. Go into our UV edit. And it won't show up because you haven't highlighted it. If you press A, hello. And so you can also shrink that down as much as you like. I recommend you have the sign front as a semi-large UV, mainly because they're where most of the detail comes from. So we've got 1, we have 2, and we've got our final one up in the corner, the right hand side. Just need to resize it a little bit more just so she fits. Cool. So then everything else can be done separately. So we can have both brackets highlighted, UV edit, and what will happen is since they're both the same bracket, we don't have to separate them, so we can just shrink them down and keep them on the bottom. Same with the rear of our signs. So what we can do is we can highlight the lot of them. Whoops, we don't want that one. So you want that rear, and that rear into our UV editing tab. A, see how they're all the same size. So make sure we've got the rear. They all can be the same color as well. And we will chuck them in the corner. So then what we can do then is we can hit the layout tab, select all, UV editing, and this is where everything is. So we've got our 3 signs here, our 2 brackets here, we've got our pole, our front, and our front. but I don't think we have them all because we were missing one. And see how they overlap? We want to avoid that as much as possible. So what we want to do is we want to go into our layout. We want to hit the front sign, UV editing, and we just want to move him down a couple. Boop, just like that. So if we go back into our layouts tab, select everything, UV editing, everything fits nice and snug within that square. And then this is when the fun part actually starts. This is where Microsoft Paint comes in handy. So we're going to be using both Paint and Paint.net because Microsoft Paint cannot export in a TGA format. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our UV tab up here. Click that. Click Export. Now I have a folder set up for this and I don't know if you can see that, which is okay. Mainly I just like to call it UV Export. Just makes it easier to find. Okay, so that's the Blender half done. Now all we need to do is make sure that we get the proper coloring. So if we switch to our painting channel and select the right monitor, we can see nothing because my second monitor does not want to work. Come in. There we go. How's that for a slice of pie? Okay, so this is my desktop. Hallelujah. So we want to go into the bottom and we want to hit Microsoft Paint. Microsoft Paint gets all the easy stuff done first. So what we want to do is we'll from File, open my last try folder, my UV export. It comes up so simple, it's hilarious. So what we want to do is we just want to assign basic colors to our sign faces so that these can just be covered by a generic metal backdrop. So I prefer, I think this one's actually pretty close. We can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, just like that, and do that with all the signs. What we can also do is use the built-in shapes to blot out these dark lines. So you want to have a solid color fill and blot out these lines. So you usually need about 2 rectangles per piece. Oops, we don't want to do that. We don't want to make sure it covers the border. We need the border. Like that. So we need, oh hello, I forgot that my Chrome comes up. Also, I forgot to say hello to you guys. Sup and hello. Sorry, I've been like really hardcore trying to get this fucking thing done because this is my 4th attempt so far. So you just want to make sure that things are all the same. I'm going to drop the formalities because it's boring me. So we just want everything the same goddamn color. Next station is Banyu. Correct. I really shouldn't have Chrome notifications on because that's a little strange. And I totally forgot my main rule. Ooh. 2 cubes per piece. I can't have it both ways. I can't have my cake and eat it too. So I'm gonna do that and do that. Boop. Yeah, just like that. And for those who don't know, this is exactly what we're making. Ah, dang it. So this is what we're making. We're making a track stop sign temporary speed restriction. So back into our painting tab, display capture, display 2. We're back. Change the comment. So we've got our basic things done. We just need to highlight the rest of these black squares because they get really annoying really quickly. You just want to do that. Same rule as before, 2 cubes per piece. Whoop. Just like that. That's the easy part done. So we want to file, export, or save as, and we want to do main underscore albedo. This will come in handy later. So we save that. Any transparency will be lost. That's okay, we don't need it. So we can close that now. Paint.net. Whoop. So you want to file, open in our last try folder with the main albedo. This is where things get tricky. Applying the text. So what we're going to do first is we're going to assign the generic metal to the brackets. So it's easy. We just go into my folder. We've got a basic sort of metal. Control V. We can just shrink this down, and that's it. That's it. That's the basic metal. Done. So what we also want to do is our sign face. So we have front, speed, and middle. Cool. So we're going to go into our text, and now the font is actually very specific. It's Highway Gothic. So you want to H Highway Logic, Highway Gothic. There we go. And it will look very familiar once I make it larger. Nope. Bigger. Maybe just a little smaller. Maybe say 160 or 170. 180, that'll do it. So that's our clearance C. Done. Now the next font, the next text will be fairly small, so we might make it 50 to start with. We'll make it 1 km. Just like that. Now if we look at the sign, it's end to end, so we'll have the 1 sit here. We'll move the km to the other side. Woo! This looks somewhat decent. And then what we also want to do on the other end is create that R. So we want that capital R, make it bigger. It's a little too small. That's more like it. So there's our capital R. And over here, this is where we put our number. So 40. So that's the paint done. Painfully simple and yet extremely elegant. So file, save as, main albedo, we want to have a TGA. Deadly simple. So we're going to go back into Blender. Whoop. Back into Blender. And in our UV tab, we want to hit open. And we will have, in my last try folder, if I can find it, there it is, we will have our TGA. Open that up, see how everything fits. It's because it's the exact same UV export we had the first time. We go into our texture paint, we go into this little tab here, boom, just like that. And now everything won't look the same straight up because it's a little weird. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to go into the shading tab, add our node. We want to go into the texture, image texture, like that. We want to hit the main albedo, and then as you watch, so we'll go into our Y. As you'll see, when I link this color tab up to that yellow dot, the colors will appear. There may be mistakes, and I will show you how to fix those. So we grab the color and we drag it to the base color. Boop! And now you can see that everything's backwards, but we can fix that. That's no problem. So we go into our UV editing tab. And what you want to do is you want to get the select tool, select this, what you want to do is to go to UV, mirror, x-axis. So we go back into our texture paint, it's facing the right way. Same for everything else. So UV editing, use the select tool, highlight it all, UV, mirror, x-axis, UV, mirror, x-axis. So that's the main bit. And what we'll do next time is putting it into the game. Actually, fuck it, we'll do it now. The one thing the game does not like, by far, is down here it says we have 996. We want to get that down to 500. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to select our back brackets, go to the modifier, and we also want to hit decimate. So it should be there. Now what will happen is, if I switch this slider down, you'll both see the number go down and it lose shape. So if we slide it down, you'll see that it starts to lose all sense of what it was. So what we want to do is we want to slide it down to the point where it just loses it, which is then. So decimating the bracket isn't the best idea. Decimating the plane is a good idea. So you want to highlight the front face, add modifier, decimate, and you watch. We can scroll and scroll and scroll and it's not getting any worse. It turns into a triangle by then. So we scroll up, just like that, 0.014437. Control C. You want to copy that number. And now what we want to do is we want to go into our back face and decimate it even further. Decimate, boop, boop. So now we're down to 720. If we do that for all our faces, I'm sure we can hit our recommended amount. So, add modifier, decimate, Control V, boop, down to 582. How good is that? So we need to select the rear, decimate, boop, 444. So because we have 444, we can probably add some more width onto our face, so it still retains that circle. So we want to copy that number, go into our rear face, copy that number, 484, and we hardly decimated anything. You can see almost no changes. So this doesn't exactly look right, so what we can do is we can fix that sign a little bit more. So, we can either shrink it, it helps if we highlight them both, and just do some tweaking. No, that's the transform tool. Just like that. We can move those up again. Move these. Move that. Whoops. Move them. Up there. That looks a little better. I think I made the font a little small, but we can work with that. And now the fun part is getting it into the game. Now as you can see, we've got that metal sort of texture on the back. So this is the hard part. So we want to go into our layout, we want to hit this, and we want to hit File, Export, FBX, and I will show you the exports. So we only need a selected object, we only need the mesh, that's all we need. And we want everything, and because it's a trackside, as we said, Y forward, and that's it. So we go into our last try folder and we're going to call this TSR. That's it. or TSR 40. Actually, no, TSR makes sense because if we want to make more, we can just use the same model. So now we go into our Trainz file. Trainz 12 compatible. I can actually. I'll have to find out what build number Trainz 12 is, and I can make it from there. So making the config file is going to suck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this. The screen will go black. I'll probably go back to my intro while I figure this out. And I can... So, intro log for now. Just bear with me. Let's go into my Steam, Trainz, play. Cool, cool, cool. Sorry, I forgot to attach my microphone. It didn't say much. I was just trying to find the Trainz 12 build number. So Trainz 2012 is 3.5. Okay, I might do 3.6, which is Trainz 12 and Trainz Simulator Mac. Griffin Rails, are you running Trainz 12 Special Pack 1? Because then I can make that a 3.7. We'll hold that 3.7 for now. So, we want to go into our managed content today. As you can see, I haven't edited anything today. New content. Yay. All right, config file text over here. So this is our QID number. So these numbers here are my personal ID. So my ID is 883564. If you search that or my name in Download Station, you'll find things that I've uploaded. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the kind, and it's going to be a scenery kind. Whoops. Scenery trackside. Author. Now, this is my in-game name, so if you search my author name in the download session, you'll find me. So Death 2018. If you find that on download station, that's me. We are in a Trainz build right now. So this is the model number of your game. So because we're making this for Trainz 12, I'm hoping he's got the special pack 1, so we're going to make this a 3.7. If not, I can make it 3.5. So after that, we need a name. What are we going to call it? That's where the username tab comes in. Not user man, username. Username tab comes in. So we're going to call this a QRail TSR 40 km. And so we also need a category class. Now I don't know category class by the back of my hand, so I'm hoping I can search it on the wiki, the severely outdated wiki, the Train Simulator 2009 wiki. See, to make sure everyone can hear me. Simulator 2000. Yep, awesome. Category class. Bear with me for a second. I'm doing a bit of Googling. Let's see. Should be W. Wayside. X, Y, vehicles wayside. So WA, signaling, WS, trackside. X. Yeah, WS. Figured that. Category class. Was it WS? So the weird thing about track speed, it has to be done in meters per second. Also, hello Joe Train, how's it going? So meters per second to kmh. I suck at math on this one, so we want to do 40k an hour. So that's 11.1. So track speed, 11.1. I'm hoping they allow points in this, otherwise we'll just have to keep it at 11. That'll do. So we've got our track speed done. Category class, username, Trainz build, author, kind. We can also do country, but we don't really need to do that. So what we can do is we can do another one. Our mesh table. Want to open our bracket. Oops, wrong bracket. We need these funky ones. Default. Mesh, I think it is. I'll have a check at my example mesh, because I'm not entirely too sure if I got it right or not. Mesh table, default mesh. Yeah. Description. Oh, we forgot a description. How could we? We don't need a description, but it makes sense to have one. Prairie. Whoops. Speed restriction of 40 kilometers an hour. We don't need that space at the front, it looks weird. So, default, our mesh. So then we do this space bar all the way up here, and our mesh is called, if I remember correctly, tsr.trainz mesh. I don't think, yeah, we need those brackets. So, auto create. Oh, it's got the hyphen in the middle of it. How silly of me. One. So that's it. Ooh, we may have made a mistake, but that's okay. So go down. Whoa, not that. We need that number. Close the bracket. Close the bracket. And then we also need a thumbnail. So the thumbnail is the worst tab by far because it always manages to screw me over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck my YouTube back at the top. Look at all these comments. Oh, I feel loved. So, can everyone hear me? Just doing a comment test. Don't mind me. I'm not being sus, I promise. Thumbnails. Where's my example config? Oh, I closed it. Bastard. Alright then. Last try config. There we go. Oh, same as the last one. We'll just go. Boop. Default. Mesh. Oh, wait, no, wrong one. Image. So we don't really have an image yet, but we can get to that. Width. Now it always likes the width to be the same kind of number. So 240 with a height of 180. Whoops. And to finish it off, we just need a GUID table with nothing in it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our image. So we close this example, minimize that, minimize that, minimize that, go back to Paint. Whee! Back to Paint. We need a 240 by 180. Highlight it yellow. Don't need to do much for the thumbnail. I just prefer to have it somewhat cool. 40. Whoops, we don't want it yellow. 40. Why are you yellow? KM. Oops, we don't want that capitalized. Oh, bugger. Fine. What? And that's it. That's our thumbnail. So save as 40.png. Or no, we can just save it as thumbnail.png. I save it as thumbnail too because I've already got a thumbnail. Go back to our Trainz. Did it crash on me? No, where is it? Oh, there it is. Whoops. 1, 2, and 3. So we want to put into our image rack thumbnail.png. And that's it. File, save. But not quite. What we're going to do is we're going to open in Explorer, and then you'll get something that looks like this. Pretty much then, all you got to do is go into your folder, grab your mesh, your thumbnail, and your albedo into this folder here. Make sure you change the name. Make sure everything's correct. Whoops, that's a thumbnail.png. I thought it said JPEG for a second. I was so fucking confused. All right. So then we go 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it lies to you. I'm being honest. Sometimes it actually lies to you. So I'm going to open up YouTube again because I can't see people commenting. Double click it. If it comes up like this, like faulty, there's something wrong with it. What did we do? So apparently there's a lot of shit we did wrong with it. Open, config. The tag track speed is not permitted within the container of type scenery trackside. Okay, so we'll just make it a scenery one. Category class not permitted. That's alright. We fixed that, didn't we? Track speed category class was missing, has been set to default. Category. Oh, my bad. I put an R in there by accident. Trackside was missing, set to default. Oh, whoops, we forgot the trackside tab. Whoops. So you want to have that 2.8. I reckon that'll do it. Mesh in default must have a mesh file extension. It does. Trainz mesh. That's it. All right. File. Save. Apparently it's still faulty. All right, this is the hard part. It's not a scenery trackside. Wait, is it the track speed or is it something else? Or is it... It's speed limit, isn't it? It's speed limit, isn't it? That's still showing up as faulty. What did I do wrong? One thing, tag in default must have a mesh file extension. Alright. Open config. We're going to open up my example config and measure. Let's have a look. Kind, quid, username, Trainz build, description, category class, default, mesh, tsr.trainsmesh. We want to create one. You want? I think it's best if we just copy paste this section here. Try and tell me that's wrong now. Huh? What are you doing? The tag mesh in default must have a mesh file extension. Bruh. It does.